Welcome to the Paul Kristoffer Show. This is Paul Kristoffer. Today we're going to talk about Super Bowl commercials, in particular 4 that stood out to me. If you were one of the millions of people who watched the Super Bowl, you no doubt saw the plentiful commercials from the minds of Madison Avenue or Silicon Valley. More on that later. And while you may have had your favorite, today I'd like to talk about 4 of my personal picks. These each aired during the 56th Super Bowl that took place on Sunday, February 13th, 2022. The themes I noted have bearing in our joint mission to reduce human suffering and misery. In this episode, I'm going to cover why these 4 ads stood out, why they were or were not effective, and what they mean to you in the broader context. Let's start off with the best commercial, Coinbase, and why it resonated to me. The advertisement featured a bouncing QR code reminiscent of a DVD player screensaver, as seen in the comedy series The Office. Electronic background music played, which was very reminiscent of rudimentary 1980s video games, such as Pong. Notably, the song was created by musician Com Truise. As the QR code bounces about the screen, the audience naturally begins to anticipate the magical moment when the symbol will precisely strike a corner of the screen and bounce. Incredibly, the QR code hits the exact upper right corner, recalling the television comedy series where the office staff remained transfixed for hours to see a real DVD screensaver hit the corner of an old cathode ray television screen. Why it was effective. The commercial evokes both a popular meme and an episode of a classic comedy TV show. The team used music that reflects and enhances the vibe of the DVD era and rewarded fans by having the QR code bounce precisely into the top right corner of the screen. The ad was highly effective in capturing the attention of their target audience. Naturally, the viewer becomes curious about where the QR code will lead them. That curiosity was rewarded with $15 worth of Bitcoin for opening an account with Coinbase. How great is that? Converting their target customer in real time during the Super Bowl by having them open an account was brilliant. The same mechanism that attracted their attention, the bouncing QR code, became the vehicle to convert new customers via the landing page, which was invoked by the user's smartphone. Of course, today, almost everyone has their smartphone in their hands during sports events. It used to be a beer or soda in the old days. Okay, but why is cryptocurrency important in the broader context of reducing human suffering? Well, cryptocurrency can help reduce the harmful effects of inflation. Inflation lowers our buying power and wreaks havoc on our savings. Cryptocurrency is, at least in theory, far less susceptible to manipulation by central banks and inflation. The economies of the Weimar Republic, Zimbabwe, Argentina, the United States in the 1980s and in 2022 have all suffered from runaway inflation that destroyed the savings of everyday people. Inflation creates a wage-price race where wages try to keep up with price gains. But they never quite seem to succeed in keeping pace. This creates misery for millions of people who need to spend an ever-increasing percentage of their income and savings on necessities like fuel, food, and healthcare or medicine. Often, inflationary periods result in recession or even depression when central banks inevitably raise interest rates. Cryptocurrency is different because no single person or group controls the amount of currency that is produced in the system. In the case of Bitcoin, for example, the total number of coins that can ever be minted is capped at 21 million. By contrast, U.S. dollars can be minted at will by the U.S. Treasury. For example, there are currently an estimated $1.2 trillion in circulation, but during the period of 2020 to 21, the U.S. government paid out or committed about $10 trillion to stimulate the economy. What effect did that have on buying power? Well, current dollars have about 7.5% less spending power than before. Unfortunately, that rate is still rising today, and we don't yet know what the peak will be. Cryptocurrency is also easier to transact, and no banks or governments can control who has access to the system. Crypto can be sent and received by anyone using the blockchain and a crypto wallet. Crypto can be sent and received by anyone using the blockchain and a crypto wallet. This avoids the need to pay excessive fees to banks or to fill out detailed and invasive application forms that violate one's right to privacy. Ultimately, this makes transacting faster, lower cost, and easier. It is very helpful to the most vulnerable in our society, including low-wage earners who otherwise cannot get a bank account. Often these groups are forced to rely on check cashing companies or payday loan operations that charge high rates and fees. Crypto eliminates reliance on banks and the banking system. In the credit crisis of 2008, the U.S. Treasury bailed out many banks that participated in the credit bubble through the Credit and Stabilization Act of 2008. But they left adrift millions of people who fell into the trap of taking out more loans than they could ever pay back. Here are some steps that you can think about taking. If you haven't already, learn more about cryptocurrency. Do your own research. If it makes sense for you and your financial portfolio and you have funds for speculation, try buying cryptocurrency. I, for example, am buying Bitcoin and Ether. Ether is the currency of the Ethereum platform. And now, dear listener, let's move on to the second commercial of note, Toyota, featuring the McKeever brothers and their story. Well, what was it? It was a video about two brothers, one of whom is diagnosed with an untreatable form of macular degeneration. His eye disease results in reduced vision. We are led to believe, through the video, that the brother suffering from vision loss is essentially blind. The other brother dedicates himself to helping the visually impaired sibling to train for cross-country skiing, and they win several medals together. After this emotional story that continues for almost a minute, we now learn that the commercial is for Toyota. Why it is not effective, in my particular opinion, is that the story literally had nothing to do with Toyota. The emotional story of the two brothers was linked to their love for each other and how neither gave up in the face of many obstacles. It is a beautiful story. The fact that Toyota would use disabled people to try and sell cars to millennials or burnish their brand is not appealing. Toyota should focus on building great cars for their customers. If Toyota wishes to support the Paralympics as part of an authentic, altruistic endeavor, that's great. But to tie Toyota branding to the story of the brothers without any further context is appalling. Well, what does this mean in the broader context of reducing human misery? Well, using the emotional stories of disabled people who overcome their limitations to accomplish great deeds to sell cars is highly disingenuous. It's inauthentic and abusive. It's inauthentic because Toyota had nothing to do with this story. It's abusive because Toyota is pulling on our heartstrings through this beautiful story of filial devotion and then abruptly presenting their logo, as if Toyota had something to do with motivating the brothers to attain their impressive accomplishments. Tesla, the most valuable automaker in the world, does no advertising whatsoever and is focused on transitioning the human race to a world of electrically powered vehicles. What you can do about it? Well, you can think about choosing to not buy a Toyota and tell Toyota why you are making this choice. Post on social media and be sure to give me a shout out. You can donate to a charity supportive of those with disabilities and support disabled athletes directly through the Paralympics organization. In addition, you can volunteer to support disabled persons and perform acts of community service. Now on to ad number 3, featuring Zeus and Hera, I guess, who retire, and this ad is by BMW. So what was it? Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger plays the role of Zeus, the chief deity of the gods. Selma Hayek plays, well, we don't know who she's supposed to play as the character is never named in the clip. I guess BMW thinks that female gods are merely nameless sex objects that hang out with the powerful male god. The story is hard to follow as a Super Bowl ad, but essentially the couple decide to retire from being gods. They relocate to Palm Springs, where Zeus's annoying neighbors ask him to charge different electric devices, like a hedge trimmer and a golf cart. Zeus accommodates the request by pointing his finger and shooting electricity into the device or battery. I'm really not sure which. They also have a pet named Peggy, which looks like a miniature flying horse. I assume it is supposed to be a Pegasus, which Zeus likes to take out on walks. Zeus also gets frustrated by the microwave, and to save the day, Hera brings home a new electric BMW that Zeus can charge to his heart's delight. Zeus happily drives down the road with a new lightness, while also, very selfishly, changing all the traffic signals to green through his finger lightning. My summary is making the ad sound much funnier than it was, because I've now watched it 4 times. It is much less funny in the middle of the Super Bowl. So why was this effective? There are an incredible 5 main reasons that I'm going to call out. The first and most important is the regressive use of Ms. Hayek as a nameless sex object. Women deserve to be named and have power beyond being a foil to a male person. We know that Mr. Schwarzenegger is playing the role of Zeus, but who is Ms. Hayek playing in the ad? Is it Hera, Zeus's wife, or someone else? Zeus was fictionalized and idolized for his misogynistic treatment of women. Are these the ideals of BMW? Why did BMW choose such a storyline that features a character whose mythology includes tricking women into sex, rape, and abuse? Haven't women suffered enough? Why should we be impressed by this? And how has our society progressed since the well-known accusations against the likes of Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and Roger Ailes? The second reason why the ad is ineffective is that the whole segment is meant to be a parody of the gods and a supposed retirement of Zeus. Parodies are supposed to be humorous, but the storyline is droll and boring. The viewer really doesn't have time to process the supposed story that Zeus wants to retire, and that when he does, he hates his retirement and wants to leave Palm Springs, or at least I didn't. The third point is the choice to hire Hollywood actors and celebrities to help sell a car. Are we supposed to think, wow, there's Arnold Schwarzenegger and Salma Hayek. This must be a good car. Celebrities are not necessary to sell a good product. Tesla, as I said earlier, does not do any advertising and certainly doesn't have Hollywood film stars. I have nothing against Mr. Schwarzenegger or Ms. Hayek or their right to earn money, but do they really need additional millions for this work? The fourth fact is that most of the electricity in the United States is generated by fossil fuels, typically coal or natural gas. To avoid stating this inconvenient fact, and to deliberately make electricity look as though it's sent by the gods is completely misleading and disingenuous. The overwhelming majority of electric cars on the road today rely on fossil fuels to charge their batteries. The fifth and final reason why this ad is not effective has to do with the pet, Peggy. We know from science that horses cannot have 4 legs and wings because horses are mammals, and mammals do not have 4 limbs plus an extra 2 that can form wings. Mammals with wings do exist. They are mainly bats, but it is their arms which have formed into wings. Bats do not have arms, legs, plus an additional 2 limbs sprouting from their spines to be used as wings. The fictional Pegasus creature is anomalous and does not fit in at all. It is misleading. It's also an insult to DNA science, Charles Darwin, genetic theory, and people with common sense everywhere. The story would have been better if Zeus had adopted a rescue pet. Aren't there millions of animals that need good homes? It would have been nice if BMW could actually have helped the world when creating this ad, instead of foolishly depicting a Pegasus. If a Pegasus did exist, which it doesn't, people would line up to adopt such a creature. Let's help out those animals that desperately need a home but don't resemble fictional, fluffy, flying creatures. So how does the BMW ad relate to the focus of this podcast, which is all about reducing human suffering and misery? As discussed in my first episode, belief to attribute physical phenomena to the gods is false and regressive. The commercial is not funny and perpetuates a bad idea for no value. Second point here, the fact that Ms. Hayek's character is a nameless sex object to Zeus is regressive and harmful. During a Super Bowl ad where we witnessed the great Billie Jean King flipping the game coin, this ad comes across as tone deaf to a woman's right to be respected and given an identity. What happened to Salma Hayek's involvement in the Time's Up movement? Well, what can you, the listener, do about it? Well, think about not buying a BMW. There are plenty of good